Is gendered reading unavoidable? Is it more of a man problem or a woman problem? And is it necessarily a bad thing? Hello and welcome back to Bookish, and welcome to a video I've been trying to make for some time, and that's a video about the impact that gender has on reading. Now, if you watch my channel, been around for a while, you know that one of the things I love most about BookTube is how it has expanded what I read, particularly in that it's taught me to embrace books by people very different from me, women, people from the transgender community, non-binary people, people of all different races and cultures, and that's one of the things I really like. Now, one of the reasons why that's kind of a revelation to me, and you may think, well, surely any intelligent person thinks that way, was that I wasn't that intelligent person before. 15, maybe 20 years ago, I would have told you that I read books primarily by men because as a man, a book by a man spoke more to me. But BookTube's helped me realize exactly how ridiculous that is, because I've had incredibly rich reading experiences, reading books by women and all these other groups that have moved me, that have changed me, that have, expanded my reading and really enriched my reading in all kinds of ways. And so, that's where I started and that's where I am. And I really thought I got to the point where my gender didn't have any impact on my reading at all. And then I had some experiences which changed my mind. So the first experience I had was with the book Cross Stitch by Jasmina Bererra. This is a book that was published, I think, either early this year or last year. And it essentially involves three friends who are all women, who are all young women at the time the story takes place. And their kind of struggles with one another, their struggles with perhaps their love lives, and then kind of how their friendship worked. And I thought the book was incredibly well done in the way in which it used cross-stitching or weaving as a metaphor for how these friends interacted with one another. Additionally, it contains all this really great historical information about how cross-stitching and weaving and those kind of things have been a language for women who weren't allowed to express themselves in other ways. So what you would get in reading the book is you get a section about the past in these women, you get a section more or less in the present in these women, and then you get this little snippet of history about cross-stitching and weaving. It was just really brilliant the way it was all put together. I found the work to be really affecting. It resonated with me in terms of the idea that you can't really 100% know your friends, and there are some things that you might not be able to help people you care very much about with. There are just some things that are too individual, too far removed to be able to be effective in helping with those things. And I thought all that was great. But part of the book is set when these young women were in school, like middle school, high school. And as I said in review, which I put up and then took down because I didn't like the way I said things and the reaction I was getting wasn't, I didn't think, in line with what I intended. But I found myself in reading those sections being bored. I found myself in reading those sections having what I'm going to refer to as a man-gendered reaction, where I almost felt like that these things were, that this discussion of how their friendship formed in their youth was silly, was frivolous, wasn't really all that important, was kind of tedious. And I realized in reading all that, that was a pretty gendered reaction. And one of the things that, I think our society has taught us to do is to dismiss the importance of girlhood and the formation of those relationships, and to assume that they're not serious, that those are years where people are just doing whatever, and there's all kinds of gossiping and backbiting, and I realized this is an incredibly gendered patriarchal reaction I was having to that book, and that disturbed me. Then, as you may know, I read Hemingway's To Have and Have Not as a part of my Reading Bad Hemingway project, which I'm not sure makes sense, but I'm going to keep going. And in my Reading Bad Hemingway project, I read Hemingway, who I have to tell you is one of my favorite authors and has been always. It was Hemingway that got me into kind of reading and thinking about myself as perhaps someone who wanted to read lots of books and to read widely, at least within originally the confines I'd established for myself. And when I read To Have and Have Not, found that so much of the book was almost like felt like it was written to be intentionally offensive to as many people as possible. I wondered how ever in my 20s I could have read that and ignored those things and liked it. And I came to the conclusion that was because I was just such an Ernest Hemingway fanboy, in the way in which lots of young men become fans of Ernest Hemingway or Chuck Palahniuk or Cormac McCarthy, that I overlooked some of those elements, and that bothered me. And then I thought to myself, do any women read Hemingway and like it? How could a woman possibly read a book by Ernest Hemingway and like it? And then I realized that question carries with it gendered expectations, that there are some books that women will like, and some books that women won't like, and some books men like, and some books men don't like. And that really bothered me also. And then here at the end of this month, when I've been busy kind of dealing with stuff for my own book, I've really only been listening to audiobooks, and primarily when I walk or drive. And I've been listening to Elmore Leonard books. And particularly I've been listening to two of the Raylan Givens novels. Raylan Givens is an Elmore Leonard character who is a U.S. Marshal who's a really good shot. He has kind of a cool manner with things, and he's a really good shot. And he shoots lots of people in the book. So there's that element of violence too. By the way, it didn't escape my notice that Hemingway and Elmore Leonard are two writers whose writing style I admire also. But I thought to myself in reading Elmore Leonard, even though his books are far less offensive to women, I think, than Hemingway's, or at least to have and have not would be, I found myself thinking, is this a book that a woman would enjoy reading? Do women enjoy reading Elmore Leonard? And then again, I realized that is a gendered question. Why shouldn't women enjoy that as much as I enjoy reading books by women? So you see where I'm going with this, that there's still these kind of gendered expectations that I have based around reading. And then additionally, I started to ask myself, what is it about Elmore Leonard's writing and Hemingway's writing and their characters that I like? And as far as their characters, I think I've identified what it is, and I think this is true for me with Cormac McCarthy to a lesser extent as well. That what I like in a male character, obviously me, is a man who is competent at lots of things and is really good at one thing, is an expert at something, and usually it's something physical. It can be shooting, it can be fishing, it can be hunting, it can be something along those lines, and that those are things that for whatever reason that resonates with me. You know, with the Cormac McCarthy books, it can be really good at handling horses. Whatever it is, that kind of expertise at something which I think, you know, people might just have described years ago as the manly arts, that appeals to me. And I started asking myself, why is that so appealing to me? I'm not really like that. I don't necessarily have aspirations to be like that. Why does that appeal to me? And I think it's in part because patriarchal thinking or patriarchal society has ingrained in me as a man that that's something to be admired, that's a kind of manliness to be admired. So, you know, what I realized in the last couple of months is I have all kinds of gender-based reactions to the things I read, some of which I think are far more harmful than others. So what I think is, and this is not a video with answers, but a video with questions. What I think is that I want to eliminate my gendered reactions to works by women which tell me, you know, the patriarchy has told me these things are not serious, these things are frivolous, these are things that can be discounted. You know, as I was talking about my reaction to the girls' school experience described in Cross Stitch, that's definitely a negative I want to eliminate. I'm less concerned perhaps about eliminating the patriarchal aspects of, you know, why I like Hemingway and why I like Elmore Leonard. I like those authors. I like those books. By the way, Hemingway and Leonard are not really on the same plane in terms of patriarchy, and I don't find Elmore Leonard's books to be misogynist in the way in which Hemingway can oftentimes be. But that aside, you know, I'm not so much interested in changing what I like as expanding or getting rid of prejudices that I have that have been placed there, perhaps by the patriarchy in which I grew up. And you know, one of the things I think as a man in my mid-50s, I hope that a lot of those gendered expectations, a lot of that patriarchal ideas are being broken down, and they'll be less common moving forward. But I also then wondered if, and again, this is more of a question which I asked at the beginning, since women, at least for up until relatively recently, let's say, Since women are more likely to have been assigned reading from men, like Fitzgerald or Hemingway or Faulkner or whoever, or Dickens, are they just more adept at blending these things together? Have they somehow acknowledged these things, moved beyond these things in their thinking? And by asking that question, am I making a gendered, I'm obviously making a gendered statement there too, but has our society trained them to be more open-minded when it comes to reading things by men than men are when it comes to reading things by women? Anyway, this is kind of a ramble, and I hope I finally said what I wanted to say about these issues and gender and reading. So I'm just going to close like I always do and tell you I look forward to your comments in the comment section below, and as always, thank you for watching.